My name is Rachel Matthews, and I'm 32 years old. For most of my life, I thought family meant unconditional love and mutual support. But sometimes, the people closest to us can take that love and twist it into something heavy, something suffocating. This is the story of how I learned that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's survival. I grew up in a modest 2-story house in suburban Pennsylvania with my parents, Linda and George, and my younger sister Vanessa. Our childhood was typical, filled with backyard barbecues and holiday traditions. But as we grew older, something shifted in the family dynamic that I couldn't quite name at the time. Vanessa was always the golden child, not because she excelled at anything particular, but because she mastered the art of needing help. She dropped out of college after one semester, claiming it wasn't for her. She bounced from job to job, never lasting more than a few months anywhere. And my parents, bless their hearts, enabled every misstep with open arms and open wallets. Meanwhile, I went to community college while working 2 part-time jobs. I graduated with honors, landed a stable position as a medical billing specialist, and saved every penny I could. I was proud of my independence, but somewhere along the way, that pride became my burden. When I was 28, after years of saving, I moved back home temporarily. My apartment lease had ended, and I was saving for a down payment on a small condo. Mom insisted I stay with them rather than waste money on another rental. It seemed like a practical decision at the time. That was 4 years ago. What I didn't anticipate was that moving home meant becoming the family's default solution to every problem, particularly those created by Vanessa. My sister had 2 children by then, Mason, who was 7, and Lily, who was 5. Their father was barely in the picture, contributing sporadic child support when he remembered. Vanessa worked part-time at a retail store, but she had a remarkable talent for calling in sick or leaving early for various personal emergencies. The arrangement started innocently enough. Mom would ask if I could watch the kids for an hour while Vanessa ran errands. Then it became afternoons, then full evenings, then weekends. I never said no. That was my first mistake. "Rachel, honey, would you mind keeping an eye on Mason and Lily tonight?" Mom would ask, already knowing my answer. Vanessa needs to work a late shift, except Vanessa's late shifts often ended at the bar downtown with her friends. I knew this because I'd see her social media posts. Drinks with her girlfriends, karaoke nights, concert check-ins. But when I mentioned this to Mom, she'd get defensive. "She works hard and deserves to blow off steam," Mom would say, her tone suggesting the conversation was over. You know how stressful single motherhood is? I didn't know, actually. But I knew what it felt like to have my own life slowly absorbed by someone else's choices. The kids were sweet, don't get me wrong. Mason was quiet and thoughtful, always drawing elaborate pictures of spaceships and dinosaurs. Lily was a chatterbox who loved dress up and insisted on wearing her princess costume everywhere, even to the grocery store. They weren't the problem. The problem was that I was becoming their primary caretaker without any of the authority or appreciation that role deserved. I fed them dinner most nights. I helped Mason with his homework and read bedtime stories to Lily. I packed their lunches and dropped them off at school when Vanessa overslept. I attended Mason's school plays and Lily's dance recitals when their own mother was too busy or too tired. And through it all, Vanessa acted as though this was simply what sisters did for each other. "Thanks for watching them again," she'd say breezily, breezing in at 10 or 11 at night, smelling of perfume and wine. "You're the best, Rach." No offer to compensate me for my time. No acknowledgement that I had my own life, my own needs, my own dreams that were slowly being deferred. The situation reached a boiling point on a Tuesday evening in late September. I had plans. Actual plans that I'd made weeks in advance. My college friend Jennifer was in town for just one night, and we'd arranged to meet for dinner and catch up. I'd been looking forward to it for weeks. At 5 o'clock, as I was getting ready, Mom knocked on my bedroom door. "Rachel, sweetie, I need a favor." My stomach dropped. "Mom, I have plans tonight. I told you about this last week." "I know, honey, but..." Vanessa has to work late and your father and I have our bridge club. We can't miss it, it's tournament night. What about Vanessa finding a babysitter? She's known about your bridge tournament for a month. Mom's expression hardened slightly. Babysitters cost money, Rachel. Money that Vanessa doesn't have right now. Your family. Family helps each other. I help constantly, Mom. Every single day. But I have plans tonight that I can't cancel, can't or won't. The question hung in the air between us, sharp and accusatory. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. I won't cancel on my friend who's only in town for one night, no. Vanessa needs to figure this out herself. My mother's face flushed. That's very selfish of you, Rachel. Those children need supervision. Then their mother should supervise them. What followed was an argument that quickly escalated beyond anything we'd had before. Dad got involved, Vanessa came upstairs crying, and suddenly I was the villain of the family for wanting, one evening to myself, the conversation event. Yuli reached a cold, hard ultimatum. If you're going to live under our roof, Dad said, his voice tight with anger, then you need to contribute more to this household. Either you help with your niece and nephew when we need you, or you start paying full market rent. $1,500 a month? I stared at him, genuinely shocked. I already contributed $400 monthly for groceries and utilities, which seemed fair given that I was rarely home and barely used any resources. $1,500? I repeated. Dad, that's more than a one-bedroom apartment costs around here. That's the rate, he said firmly. Either you're part of this family and you help out, or you're a tenant and you pay rent. Your choice. Mom stood beside him, arms crossed, nodding in agreement. Vanessa watched from the doorway, her expression unreadable. I looked at each of them, these people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, and I realized something profound. I had become invisible except for what I could provide. I need to think about it, I said quietly, and left for my dinner with Jennifer. Over pasta and wine, I told Jennifer everything. She listened without interruption, her expression growing more concerned with each detail. Rachel, she finally said, you know this isn't normal, right? You've essentially been a free nanny for 4 years while also paying rent and being treated like you're doing something wrong by having your own life. They're family, I said weakly. Family doesn't exploit you. This is exploitation dressed up as obligation. Her words echoed in my mind long after dinner ended. I drove home slowly, taking the long route, processing everything. When I arrived back at the house around 10, it was quiet. The kids were asleep. Vanessa was on the couch watching reality TV and eating ice cream straight from the container. She barely looked up when I came in. Did you have fun? She asked, tone flat. Yes, actually. It was nice to see Jennifer. Must be nice to have free time, Vanessa said, still not looking at me. Something inside me snapped. Vanessa, can I ask you something honestly? She finally glanced over. Sure. Do you appreciate what I do for Mason and Lily? Do you even notice? She shrugged. I mean, yeah, you're good with them. That's not what I asked. Do you appreciate it? Do you understand that I'm sacrificing my own life to help raise your children? Her expression shifted to defensive. No one's forcing you, Rachel. If it's such a burden, then stop. You're right, I said quietly. No one's forcing me. And I am going to stop. I went upstairs, and for the first time in years, I felt clarity instead of confusion. The next morning I called a realtor I'd worked with before. By afternoon, I was looking at a small one-bedroom apartment 15 minutes away. It wasn't fancy, just 800 square feet with older appliances and carpet that had seen better days. But it was mine. The rent was $900, far less than what Dad was demanding. I put down a deposit that day and signed the lease. My move-in date was 3 weeks away. For those 3 weeks, I said nothing to my family. I continued my routine, but I started quietly packing. A box here, a bag there. I transferred my important documents to a safe deposit box at the bank. I changed my mailing address. I set up utilities at the new place. I also started documenting everything. Every time I watched the kids, I noted it in my phone with timestamps. Every dollar I'd contributed to the household over the years, I calculated. Not because I planned to demand repayment, but because I needed to see the reality of the situation in black and white. The numbers were staggering. In 4 years, I'd contributed over $20,000 due. Lars in rent and expenses. I'd provided childcare that would have cost Vanessa at least another $30,000 if she'd paid for a babysitter or daycare. I'd sacrificed weekends, evenings, social opportunities, and potential relationships. And what had I received in return? A roof over my head that came with strings so tight they were strangling me. The night before my move, I sat Mason and Lily down privately. This was the hardest part. "I need to tell you both something," I said, sitting on the floor of the playroom with them. "Aunt Rachel is going to move to her own apartment tomorrow." Lily's eyes filled with tears immediately. "But why? Don't you love us anymore?" My heart broke. "Oh, sweetheart, I love you both so much. That will never change. But I need my own space, my own home. Grown-ups need that sometimes." "Will we still see you?" Mason asked quietly. "Of course. We'll have special days together. Maybe I can take you to the park on Saturdays, or we can have movie nights at my new place. But I won't be here every day anymore." "Is it because we're bad?" Lily whispered. I pulled them both into a hug. "You are not bad. You're wonderful, perfect kids, and I'm so lucky to be your aunt. This isn't about you at all. This is about Aunt Rachel needing to live her own life." We sat like that for a long time. The three of us huddled together on the worn carpet. That night, after the kids were in bed, I went downstairs where Mom, Dad, and Vanessa were watching television. "I need to tell you all something," I said. 3 pairs of eyes turned toward me. "I'm moving out tomorrow. I've rented an apartment and the lease has already been signed." Silence. Then chaos. "What do you mean you're moving out?" Mom demanded. "Exactly what I said. I found a place and I'm leaving tomorrow afternoon." "But what about the kids?" Vanessa said, her voice rising. "What am I said to do?" "You're their mother, Vanessa. You'll figure it out like every other single parent does. Arrange childcare, adjust your work schedule, ask Mom and Dad for help." "But I'm not available anymore. This is incredibly selfish," Dad said, his face reddening. "After everything we've done for you." "What have you done for me, Dad?" I asked, my voice surprisingly calm. "You've provided housing in exchange for free labor. That's not generosity, that's an employment arrangement, and I'm resigning." "We're your family," Mom said, tears starting to form. "How can you abandon your own niece and nephew?" "I'm not abandoning them. I'm establishing boundaries. There's a difference." "What about the rent situation we discussed?" Dad pressed. "You never gave us an answer." "This is my answer. I'm choosing option 3, leave." Vanessa stood up, shaking. "You're seriously just going to leave us high and dry? What kind of sister are you?" For once, I didn't absorb the guilt she was trying to project onto me. "I'm the kind of sister who helped raise your children for 4 years while you rebuilt your social life. I'm the kind of sister who put her own dreams on hold so you could pursue yours. I'm the kind of sister who finally realized that love shouldn't feel like drowning." I turned to leave, then paused. "I'll still see Mason and Lily regularly, if you'll allow it, but on my terms, not as an obligation. I love those kids. But I can't sacrifice myself anymore." I went upstairs and finished packing while the house erupted in arguments below me. I heard Vanessa crying, Mom's angry voice, Dad's frustrated outbursts. But for the first time, their emotions weren't my responsibility to manage. The next day, 2 friends from work helped me move. It took 3 trips in a borrowed truck. My family stayed locked in various rooms, refusing to come out or say goodbye. Only Mason and Lily appeared in the doorway as I was loading the last box. their small faces etched with confusion and sadness. I knelt down and hugged them both. "I love you both so very much. I'll call you this weekend, okay?" They nodded, tears streaming down their faces. Driving away from that house felt like shedding a heavy coat I'd been wearing for years. My chest loosened, my shoulders dropped. I took the first full breath I'd had in what felt like forever. The apartment was empty when I arrived, just bare walls and echoing rooms. But it was mine. Every inch of it was mine. That first night, I ate takeout Chinese food sitting on the floor since my furniture hadn't arrived yet. I listened to the unfamiliar sounds of my new home. The hum of the refrigerator, the neighbor's muffled television, the creak of the building settling, and I smiled. I was 32 years old, and I was finally starting my life. The first few weeks were an adjustment. My phone rang constantly. Mom calling to guilt me, Vanessa calling to rage at me, even Dad calling to tell me I was making a huge mistake. I let most of the calls go to voicemail. When I did answer, I kept the conversations brief and firm. "I'm not changing my mind. No, I can't babysit this weekend. I love you, but I'm not discussing this anymore." The hardest calls were from Mason and Lily. Vanessa had clearly told them that I'd abandoned them, and they were confused and hurt. I scheduled supervised visits at a park, much to Vanessa's irritation, and slowly rebuilt my relationship with the kids on healthier terms. "Why don't you live with us anymore?" Lily asked one Saturday at the playground. "Because grown-ups need their own homes," I explained gently. "Just like you have your own room, I need my own space. But that doesn't mean I love you any less. Mommy says you don't want to help her anymore." I chose my words carefully. "I'll always help when I can, but I also have to take care of myself. Does that make sense?" She nodded, though I could tell she didn't fully understand. That was okay. Understanding would come with time. Mason was quieter about the whole situation, but observant in that way thoughtful children often are. "Mom's mad at you," he said during one visit, stating it as simple fact. "I know she is. Is it because you moved out?" "Partly. Your mom and I see things differently right now. But adults sometimes disagree, and that's okay. What's important is that I love you and Lily, and I always will." He nodded, seeming to accept this. Then, unexpectedly, he said, "I think you're brave." "Why do you say that?" "Because you did something hard that you needed to do. My teacher says that's what brave means. Out of the mouths of children." I blinked back tears and hugged him tight. Meanwhile, my own life began to bloom in ways I hadn't anticipated. Without the constant obligation of childcare, I had time, actual free time. I joined a book club at the local library. I started taking evening walks in my neighborhood, discovering coffee shops and parks I'd never noticed before. I rekindled friendships that had withered from neglect. I also started therapy. My therapist, Dr. Patricia Chen, helped me understand the family dynamics I'd been trapped in. "You became the parentified child," she explained during one session. "You were expected to be the responsible one, the caretaker, while your sister was allowed to remain dependent. Your parents reinforced this dynamic because it served their needs. They didn't have to deal with Vanessa's struggles if you were managing the fallout. But they're my parents. Shouldn't they have my best interests at heart? Ideally, yes. But parents are human, and humans are flawed. Sometimes parents develop patterns that are more about their comfort than their children's well-being. That doesn't make them evil. It makes them human. But it also means you have every right to protect yourself. Those sessions gave me language for what I'd experienced and permission to prioritize my own needs without guilt. 3 months after I moved out, Mom called. Her tone was different, softer, less accusatory. "Rachel, can we talk? Really talk?" "Okay. Would you be willing to meet for coffee?" We met at a neutral location, a quiet cafe downtown. Mom looked older somehow, tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. "I've been thinking a lot," she said after we ordered. "About what you said when you left. About how we treated you." I waited, not sure where this was going. Your father and I didn't realize how much we were asking of you. Or maybe we did, and we just didn't want to acknowledge it because it was convenient. She looked down at her coffee cup. That's a hard thing for a mother to admit. Mom, she held up a hand. Let me finish. You were always the easy one, Rachel. The one who didn't cause problems, who handled things, who we didn't have to worry about. And we took advantage of that. We took advantage of your good nature and your love for your family. Tears were streaming down her face now. I'm so sorry, honey. I'm sorry we made you feel like you didn't matter except for what you could do for us. That's not love. That's not what parents should do. I felt my own tears starting. I just needed someone to see me, Mom. To see that I was drowning. I see you now. And I'm so sorry it took you leaving for that to happen. We talked for 2 hours. Mom explained that my leaving had forced them all to confront the reality of the situation. Vanessa had to actually arrange childcare and face the cost and logistics. Dad had to admit that his ultimatum was unfair and controlling. The family had to function without using me as the solution to every problem. It wasn't easy for them. Vanessa had to cut back her social life significantly. Mom and Dad had to babysit more often. There were conflicts and difficult conversations, but they were finally dealing with reality instead of avoiding it. We'd like you to come to family dinner next Sunday, Mom said. If you're willing. No strings attached, no expectations. Just dinner. I thought about it. Okay, but I need to be clear. I'm not coming back as the family babysitter. I'll visit as your daughter, and as Aunt Rachel. But my primary responsibility is to myself now. I understand. And that's as it should be. That family dinner was awkward but healing. Vanessa apologized, though. I could tell she still harbored some resentment. Dad was gruff but sincere in his own way. Mason and Lily were thrilled to see me in their home again. We didn't magically become a perfect family. Healing doesn't work that way. But we started the slow process of rebuilding relationships on healthier foundations. Over time, I established new patterns with my family. I visited every other Sunday for dinner. I took Mason and Lily on one Saturday adventure per month. Sometimes the zoo, sometimes the children's museum, sometimes just the park. I was present in their lives, but not consumed by them. I also started dating for the first time in years. Nothing serious at first, just casual dinners and movie nights. It felt strange to have time for romance again, to be someone other than the responsible daughter and devoted aunt. At work, I pursued a promotion I'd been putting off. Without the constant exhaustion of managing everyone else's needs, I had energy to invest in my own career. I got the promotion, along with a significant raise. With the extra income, I started saving aggressively for a down payment on a small house. It became a goal, something concrete to work toward that was just for me. One evening, about 8 months after I'd moved out, I was relaxing in my apartment when my phone rang. It was Vanessa. Hey, she said, her voice uncertain. Are you busy? Just watching TV. What's up? I wanted to tell you something. I got a new job, full-time, with benefits. Better hours too, so I can be home with the kids more in the evenings. Vanessa, that's wonderful. Yeah, it is. It's harder work, more responsibility. But it's good for us. She paused. I also wanted to say thank you. And I'm sorry. For what? For taking advantage of you for so long. For not appreciating what you were doing. For not being the parent my kids deserved. Her voice cracked. You were more of a mother to them than I was for a while there, and that's something I have to live with. Vanessa, no, it's true. But I'm trying to do better now. To be better. Because you were right, they're my responsibility, not yours. And I need to step up. We talked for an hour, the longest real conversation we'd had in years. She told me about her therapy, about confronting her own patterns of avoidance and dependency. She told me about how hard it had been when I left, but also how necessary it was. You leaving was the wake-up call I needed, she admitted. I was coasting through life expecting everyone else to catch me when I fell. But I'm 30 years old with 2 kids, It's time I learned to stand on my own feet. I'm proud of you, I said. And I meant it. When we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my apartment and reflected on how far we'd all come. The family hadn't fallen apart when I set boundaries. It had actually grown stronger, healthier. Everyone was forced to be more self-sufficient, more honest, more real. Years later, when Mason was 14 and Lily was 12, we were all together for Thanksgiving dinner. The kids had grown into thoughtful, kind young people despite, or perhaps because of, the turbulence of their early years. After dinner, Mason pulled me aside. "Aunt Rachel, can I ask you something?" "Of course. I remember when you moved out. I was little, but I remember being sad and confused. I remember too. I understand now why you did it," he said. "Mom explained everything to me when I got older. And I want to say thank you." "For what, sweetie?" "For showing me that it's okay to set boundaries, even with people you love. For teaching me that taking care of yourself isn't selfish." He smiled. "I'm using that lesson now with my friends. One of them was always asking me for homework answers, and I finally told him no. It was hard, but it was right." I hugged him tight, marveling at how this young man had learned from my example. Perhaps the hardest thing I'd ever done had taught the most important lesson of all. That night, driving home to the small house I'd eventually saved up for and purchased, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The pain of feeling invisible, the courage it took to leave, the slow healing that followed, and the growth, both mine and my family's, that resulted. I'd learned that love doesn't mean sacrificing yourself on the altar of other people's needs. Real love respects boundaries. Real love wants you to thrive, not just survive. Real love sees you as a whole person, not just what you can provide. Setting boundaries with my family wasn't abandonment. It was the most loving thing I could have done, both for them and for myself. It forced everyone to grow, to take responsibility, to become healthier versions of themselves. And me? I finally learned that my worth wasn't measured by how much I could give or how many problems I could solve. My worth was inherent, unchanging, independent of my usefulness to others. I was 32 when I moved out of my parents' house and started my real Lee. I'm 37 now, and I've never looked back with regret. Only forward, with hope. Because sometimes the kindest thing you can do, for yourself and for those you love, is to quietly close the door on what's breaking you and walk toward what makes you whole. And that's exactly what I did. If this story touched your heart, or reminded you of your own journey toward self-discovery and healthy boundaries, I'd be so grateful if you'd like this video. Share it with someone who might need to hear this message, subscribe to the channel for more stories of courage and healing, and leave a comment below sharing your own experiences with family dynamics and setting boundaries. Your story matters, and your voice could be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Thank you for listening.